New this morning, the U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments Monday in a case that could impact folks right here at home when it comes to whether football coaches can pray on the field after games.
The case involves a former Christian football coach in Washington State who lost his job after kneeling on the field and saying prayers as student athletes gathered around him. Now this morning, we have a live interview with Lisa Roy, who is a law professor at the University of Mississippi.
Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us, Professor Roy.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So what is the basic disagreement between the former coach and the school district that the U.S. Supreme Court must resolve in order to make a ruling in this case?
Well, you described the facts of the case. You've got this, I think, former assistant coach who was praying on the football field after the games. And so the coach's position is that this is his private speech, that he was engaging in an act of prayer, and the school's position is that this is prayer that's forbidden by the Establishment Clause. And so kind of one of the hinge points in the case is whether or not this is prayer that should be attributed to the school district, so that they've got a responsibility to make sure that no one's coerced into joining it, or whether in fact it's prayer that's strictly attributable to the teacher. And really in any case, the school district has to make sure that no students are coerced. But kind of the big issue is whether this is the school's prayer, something that the teacher's doing as coach is engaging in, it's kind of part of his coaching duties, or whether this is his private speech that's protected by the First Amendment.
And so you've kind of going off of your last statement there, how difficult do you think it will be for the court to, make a ruling that protects both of those constitutional provisions?
So I don't think it will be, difficult as it might seem. I think that the court has said that there's a difference between government speech and private speech that's protected by the Constitution. And so I think the important thing is to underscore that employees have their private speech, but that the school also has a responsibility to make sure that that there's no coercion, and that seems to be a point of agreement. We had the oral argument yesterday, and if you listen to the oral argument, one of the things that one of sort of the themes there was this idea of no coercion, and that seems to be kind of a baseline of agreement, across kind of the spectrum among the justices. And so I don't think it would be terribly difficult for the court to say that no student should be coerced into joining the coach, and as long as they're not coerced, then there's not an Establishment Clause violation, or at least not necessarily an Establishment Clause violation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now some people feel very strongly about this. They know where they stand on it, but now other people may see some valid arguments on both sides of this case, and therefore they may find it difficult to form their own opinion on this. So what are some specific aspects, would you say, of this case that people may want to think about as they try to make up their minds of whether they agree with the coach or if they agree with the school district?
Well, I think there's a reason for that, right? That people may be sort of on the fence because they're, good arguments that the school can make, that they're concerned about kind of the environment for the students, and there are, arguments certainly that the coach has made. And there are also two sort of facts in the case that would support either the coach or the school district. I think, one of the things that came up yesterday in the oral argument was sort of just the issue of whether or not, even if the coach had been kind of by himself, he can, on the football field, after the game, say a prayer. And I think when you sort of focus on that aspect of it, I think it sort of makes the case, I think, particularly sympathetic for the coach, that he's, like any other citizen, sort of engaging in kind of his speech and religious exercise. And so I think for some folks that, that will be certainly, something that maybe makes the case more sympathetic for the coach. I think in terms of the school district, you can sort of understand that they're worried about possible coercion. They're worried about possible endorsement. Maybe people thinking that he is a reflection of the school district's official view. Certainly, though, the controversy in the case, I think, is likely to dispel any kind of idea going forward that activities that if he were rehired, or if the next coach were to engage in similar activity. The controversy has dispelled, I think, any idea that this is now endorsed by the school. And so I think they're in a position where they can separate themselves, I think, from his activity.
Well, Thank you so much for talking to us about this big story that's gone across the country lately. And I do want to ask you, your university bio says you are very interested in church and state issues and the interaction between religion and law. Why do you think these are important issues, and what do you find interesting about them?
So I think they're important because they're just real human issues, and they touch so many different aspects of our lives. They touch so many different people, whether religious or not, right? So most people have some sort of an opinion about a lot of these cases, and so I think they are engaging. I think they affect people of different cultures. You find the kind of the human phenomenon of the practice of religion across the globe, across cultures. And so it's just a very kind of dynamic area. And teaching in it is a real pleasure. I find students are very interested in these issues. Really, as I said, it cuts across not just cultures, but it cuts across sort of a political spectrum. So it's just a very dynamic and interesting area to work in and to teach in.
Well, Professor Roy, thank you so much again for joining us and to take the time so early to talk about this story with us.
Thank you for having me.